Hi guys, Emma here, and today I'm going to be talking about part 11 of Twin Peaks, some of the thoughts and theories I've had since my last video. And I have to say that I think that episode 11 may be my favourite so far. I went back to the episode almost immediately, and having watched it at least a couple of times since then, I think that every scene is perfectly placed. I was completely engaged all the way through. I think the acting in this episode is particularly good. I think the characterization is very good. The cinematography is very good. I mean, everything about this episode just had me enthralled from beginning to end. So yes, I think this may be my favourite episode so far in the series. Today I'm just going to be talking very briefly about some of the thoughts that I've had since my reaction video. To start with, I'm going to be thinking about the Log Lady's speech that she said to Hawk. And it was so obvious that she said a couple of things twice in that conversation that she had with Hawk. She said, "Can you hear me, Hawk? Can you hear me, Hawk?" And then she said, "There is fire where you are going, there is fire where you are going." This corresponded with what Hawk said about his map, and Frank's question about whether the fire was always bad, and Hawk said it's not always bad, depends on the intent, but there is a black fire and there is another kind of fire, which I assume is a good fire. And I noticed that the golden fire was positioned on the map beside the falls, which would be, I think, an approximate location to the Great Northern Hotel, which would correspond with my thoughts that the Great Northern is a very special place, perhaps the entrance to the White Lodge. Going on from the fires, the different types of fires, when we saw the little boy get knocked over by Richard Horne in a previous episode, we saw what seemed to be his soul rise up from his body, and it looked like a golden fire, right? And in this episode, part 11, we saw Gordon Cole looking into this vortex, spinning vortex, and it seemed to be sucking things up from planet Earth. But it was like black marks. I didn't really think about it the first time I saw it, but the next time I saw it, I wondered if these black dots that are getting sucked up into this vortex are the opposite of what we saw when we saw the boy getting run over. And actually, these black marks are black fires, so they are the souls of people who have been corrupted, perhaps, the souls of bad people, the souls of people who are no longer innocent. And I think that this is what the Woodsmen are feeding on. They are actually feeding on black fire, on what might be considered as the fuel created by the ingestion of garmonbozia. So basically that's why the Woodsmen are charred black, because they are actually ingesting a kind of fuel. So that's my theory anyway. I think that all things must exist in a balance. Rather like the black and white lines of the Black Lodge, they are evenly balanced. But I think what is happening in Twin Peaks now is that the dark side is becoming more prominent. So if you think about those lines, for instance, we might be seeing a narrowing of the white lines. And if you think about the fires, if you want to use the fire as an analogy of what's going on, the black fires are raging much more than the pure golden fires. I think that the balance of good and evil has been tipped dramatically to the side of evil because of the fact that Evil Coop is not in the Black Lodge where he's supposed to be. And that is why we are seeing all these horrific things happening in Twin Peaks, and all good souls are becoming bad. Now, I don't think that there is actually two worlds, but I think that the poem, Fire Walk With Me poem, One Chance Out Between Two Worlds, I think that the two worlds are these instances of the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, good and bad. I don't necessarily think there are two instances, like parallel universes of one world of good, one world of evil. I think they are the same world, but that just some things in regards to the soul, in regards to morality, may be changed within each world, and that the balance of these worlds creates what we know as reality. I think the fact that there is an imbalance at the moment between these two worlds could explain moments like the people changing in the diner, because this could show us what one world would look like when people made a certain choice, and then the other frame of that same scene could show us what the other world would look like if people made another choice. I hope this is making sense, but I do think balance should be restored once evil Coop is put back in the lodge. And that leads to questions about Laura as well. Should Laura actually be alive and that would restore the balance of good and evil? Or does this mean that Laura could never be alive again, as some people are theorising that she might be alive or she might be able to live again? Does this mean that Laura could never really live because that would tip the balance over towards a good world? I don't know if that would be such a bad thing. So in my last video I mentioned that the Woodsmen reminded me of an ant colony. Can you tell that I've had an ant infestation lately? Yeah, but when Cole went up into the vortex and he saw the Woodsmen on the stairs, they reminded me of the kind of ants that stand at the hole of a colony, and they guard the colony, and they also relay information back to anyone who was coming to the colony entrance. So I think that these Woodsmen were guarding the convenience store, if that's where they were, and they were also there to relay information between other Woodsmen who are going out into the world. Very interesting, and I didn't notice it myself, but other fans have noticed that the background next to the Woodsmen on the stairs looked to be the same wallpaper that was in the room where Laura went when she was given the picture in Fire Walk With Me by the Treemans. That would make a lot of sense actually, that Laura was given this picture as a kind of doorway. I also wanted to say that in regards to an ant colony, and sorry to go on about this, but in an ant colony there are different kinds of ants. There are ones that are worker ants, there are queen ants, there are winged ants, male reproducing ants. It's a very complex ecosystem that ants have, and I think that we might be seeing a bit of this in the kind of evil entities that we are seeing in Twin Peaks in the show itself. So I think that entities like Bob and the Little Man and the Treemans and the Jumping Man and the Grandson Magician, I think these are separate entities from the Woodsmen, but they are related in some way. They are all interconnected in the same hive, in the same colony. So I don't know how long it's taken for the darkness to have enveloped Twin Peaks, but maybe it's been a long 25-year process. Maybe it's just happening now because of something to do with the stars aligning, something to do with the opening of the lodges. But it's clear that with like the children of Twin Peaks, something is desperately wrong. I think the new generation is actually ill. They are ill from evil. So that was my thoughts on basically what is happening overall in the show and trying to make some sense of it, but I wanted to look at a few other scenes as well. I'm going to talk about the scene with Cooper at the end when he was with the Mitchum brothers. I was trying to remember what song it was in my last video that Heartbreaking by Angelo Badalamenti reminded me of, and it is actually a song called Caruso. I'll leave a link to a version of it in the description below and you can have a listen to that because it's a beautiful song, and I think that this may have been Badalamenti's Caruso moment with Cooper, because we saw a very subtle and brief awakening of Cooper. I think Kyle MacLachlan's acting in that scene was spectacular for us to be able to see the real Cooper for such a brief moment in just a facial expression. He was able to do that. I have to say that I didn't initially cry at that scene, but having rewatched, I actually burst into tears at that scene because of the fact that I think I had a good think about what that old lady was saying to Cooper. You know, she was saying, this is my son and I have a dog now, I have a little dog, and I have a house and I have my life back, she said. And it just made me think of everything that Cooper has lost from being stuck in the lodge for the last 25 years, and what a sad reality that is for him, to have lost all of that experience, to have lost all of that time. It's just extremely sad, and for him to have given all of this goodness to a stranger, even in his doggy state, makes me think that Cooper is nothing but a hero, a complete hero. I think the sacrifice for him will be worth it for everyone else in the end, but I still feel sad for him for what he is missing and what he could have had. And so lots of theories about Candy going round. I mentioned that I was still having trouble accepting Candy, and that's because I feel sorry for her. I think she comes across as a victim to me, and someone who was very traumatized almost. As if she's had a past that has left her like this, in this hazy state. She could be on drugs, masking her own situation because she doesn't like where she is in life, or she might just be completely psychologically damaged from something that has happened to her. And we know that she hasn't been in a good place because of the fact that Jim Belushi's character said that she had nowhere else to go. I like the theory that Candy represents the audience, the viewing audience, and that's why she hit Bradley, is it? I can't remember their names, the Mitchum brothers, Robert Nepper's character. That's why she hit him with the TV remote, and then she is also echoing what we saw in the last episode by saying that she saw a lot of cars because there were a lot of scenes with cars in that episode. My own personal theory is that could Candy be being utilised by the one-armed man or somebody else from that world to try and help Cooper? So every time we see her space out, is she actually being instructed by someone that nobody else can see? Perhaps we haven't seen her undertake her mission yet. Perhaps she has been given instructions on how to protect Coop, on how to be by his side, on how to deal with the Mitchum brothers and their relationship to Cooper. I just don't know, but Candy's quite interesting. I think that the actress is playing it a little like Naomi Watts played Betty in Mulholland Drive. Very over the top, putting on this demeanour of innocence, and there are some moments that she exclaims things as if she's seeing it for the first time, as if she's completely overawed by the world that she exists in. This makes her a little like Dougie in a way, someone who is experiencing the world anew. She also reminds me a little bit of Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, the way she suddenly awakens and has these moments of, golly gosh, is that what's going on? I'd like to believe that Candy is something more than just a traumatized young girl who is being played for laughs. I'd like to think that she had a bigger role in the story and that she is not just the third wheel in the Mitchum brothers scenario. Yeah, just a great episode again. I think that this episode really made me feel like so thankful that Twin Peaks has actually returned and that we got the chance to see this kind of thing. We got the chance to see these characters and see Cooper. It also made me think that Dougie's journey, the one that many of us have been frustrated with, has been a necessary one because of the fact that if we got Coop back straight away, we might never have thought about how much of a struggle his time in the lodge has been and what it has actually done to him and how it's left him. Who he is now, I'm sure Cooper, when he comes back, will be a very different man. He couldn't not be after experiencing what he has been through. And I think that this episode really brought that home to me. And that's it.